Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
My next guest this morning is a native of Germany, but has made Schull in West Cork the home for her jewellery business, Enibas. Sabine, back in 1990, you decided to hitchhike across Europe, where a chance meeting in Westport ended up having a big impact on your future.
It certainly did, Carl. I came here all that time back. I just wanted to get away by myself, and I bought this in-trail ticket in February, and I wasn't going to go until about July or something. And I arrived here in Ireland. I'm not quite sure why Ireland. I just had this feeling to come here. I just thought if it doesn't work out, I'll just catch the ferry back to France and, just go from there. So anyway, I arrived on the ferry in Roslair. I'd met this girl on the ferry who was also traveling by herself. We actually realized there's no trains really in Ireland. We'd have to hitch. So we decided to hitch together to be on the safe side. And a couple of days later, we're hitching in Westport to go to Achill Island. And that is where my now husband, picked us up off the road, and we fell in love. That's basically what happened.
So, yourself and Len set up home in Schull in West Cork. Why did you choose there?
Well, really the way it was is that Len was running a building company down here in West Cork, and he was living here. And I knew I was studying in Hamburg. I was studying fashion design at the time. That's where I came from when I came here on holidays. It was just like a student holiday, basically. And so he was down in Schull, so I knew he was never gonna come and live in a big city. He loved nature and everything. So it was one of those situations, where I just had to ask myself. It was really hard to make the decision to give things up, but I sort of had to try it because it was one of those things where you'd always have asked yourself going forward, what would have happened if? And I just had to try it and do it and see what happened. So that's really how I ended up here. It wasn't by my choosing, but I was very lucky to end up in a really cosmopolitan and beautiful, very artist-driven part of Ireland. So I'm forever grateful for the chance meeting. Yeah.
So once you settled in Schull, County Cork, you started to design and make your own jewellery. How would you describe these early pieces? And at the time, was it always your intention to establish a jewellery business?
Yeah, I started doing it really just as a hobby. And when I came here to live, I was always from the very beginning really inspired by Ireland, by the beauty of it, by the history of it, and all that. And these influences came into even my earliest pieces. After that, I started working with Celtic script, with Celtic symbols, but always keeping it in a contemporary design. It wasn't sort of Celtic-y. It had a contemporary edge to it that was really important to me from the beginning. So no, it wasn't planned to make it into a business, but my husband basically lost his job back then. The company went bust, and he said to me, Sabine, why don't we make that hobby of yours into a business? And I said, no, that'd be terrible. I hate business, but he said, no, let's give it a go, and he really started it off back then. It was just me doing the designing and that, yeah.
Now, there are many high-profile jewellery designers in operation in Ireland. So how difficult was it for you to establish the Enibas brand in the early days?
Do you know, Carl, back then it was actually, there wasn't actually as many designers out there, so it was a bit easier, and we had amazing support just here locally in the village. I mean, we had very little money. We started from scratch really with nothing, and we just did local markets to start with, and everybody was so supportive, and we then my husband has got a business. He's got a business, so he got us to then start. We got a grant from the Enterprise Board, and then we got to exhibit at Showcase. This is a long time back, up in Dublin, where we started getting into some of the bigger shops, like the Kilkenny shop in Dublin actually stocks us for 15 years plus. So it was a bit easier probably back then than what it is now. There was a bit less competition. Yeah.
Okay, now the initial success of the business resulted in the opening of an Enibas shop in Schull, and later you created a retail presence in Kinsale. But when the recession hit, a change in buying patterns had adverse impact on the turnover of the Kinsale store.
Yeah, it's interesting that. I reckon it's probably because we were only maybe a couple of years into the Kinsale store when the recession happened. And my experience here running a retail shop is that you really have to do your time and establish yourself. And especially in a recession, people go back to what they trust and what they know provides service quality and so on. And back then we were new, I suppose. So it hit us a bit harder there than it did in Skull. But we're now 10 years in Kinsale, so business is flying there for us now. But that's the only reason that I can really think of, that we were hit that bit harder in Kinsale than down here.
Now, unfortunately, many retail businesses became victims of the recession, but Enibas responded by exploring online sales channels at the time.
Yes, we actually decided around that time to go into the online, it was just another channel for us that we could bring in some cash flow, and it just helped us, come across these drops in turnover. So it wasn't really obviously we didn't know the recession was going to happen. It was sort of just coincided, and it was really great because it was the website then that started growing a lot and working for us, and that helped us. That was just another thing that helped us to stay in business over that difficult time back then through the recession. Yeah.
Now, one of the most difficult things in business for people today is to build a brand, and it's so crucially important to have that brand identity when it comes to craft businesses like your own jewellery business. What advice would you give to anybody starting off on their journey today in terms of how to create a brand?
I think looking back, our brand has grown really organically. It was nothing was really planned. We didn't sit down and say, we want to achieve that, we want to achieve this. Now, if I was to do this now again, or if I was to, for example, start a new brand, which is a possibility, I would sit down and really, from the beginning, try and understand what I'm wanting to create, who I want to sell to. I would start working with mood boards. I would start becoming very clear and having a very clear vision how I want my brand to be. You could do things like explore words that describe your brand. We once did that a while ago. It took us about a whole day to find 5 words to describe Enibas.
And tell me about the background to the name of your own business, Enibas. Where did that originate from?
Yeah, so Enibas is my name turned around, Sabine, Sabine. And I suppose when we first were looking for a business name, all that way back, I always liked my name turned around as a child. I would always do that with my friends, and it sounded a little bit like Enya, or it sounded sort of a little bit Irishy, I thought. So that's how we decided to go with that. And we have customers that come to us for a long time, and I say to them after years, did you realize what Enibas meant? And they go like, oh my God, I can't believe it. I never realized that.
Talk to me as well about how you went about extending your product range as time went on.
Yeah, I suppose when we were hit by the recession back then, I knew our sales were going back in our own shop, plus also in our wholesale business. And I knew that I had to come up with out with a product that was more affordable, that had some more affordable price points. And I had already been playing quite a bit with text and script and messages on the jewellery, words, Irish words, words in the Book of Kells and so on, and that started proving really so popular. And I then brought out the Creole collection, which is our most popular collection, meaning a beautiful heart in Irish, and we continued from there, having Irish messages on the jewellery, and we make obviously everything down here in the workshop from scratch ourselves. And it's a complete Irish.
And has it done any damage to the more expensive line of jewellery that you were selling?
Not at all, because what actually happened in that particular collection is that, there's such an upsell that you can actually own an Enibas piece, but if you want to go higher, then you can. And we find that our most popular piece actually is a pendant that is made out of silver and tooth, and that's actually our most popular piece. It's, even though it's sort of more the mid or upper price range, it didn't actually affect us at all, those higher price points.
That's interesting, Sabine. So what's next for Enibas?
So I suppose, I'm coming to the big 5-0 next year. So I just want a little bit more freedom for myself. So we've done lots of work at the back end. We recently purchased our shop, and I have a studio upstairs where I work. All the shops are now staffed fully, and the workshop is staffed fully. So I'm sort of now managing and running the business and designing the jewellery ranges. So really, a lot of that work is done in terms of structuring the business, and I'm hoping to get more time to design, develop new ranges, maybe do a wedding and engagement collection. So just wanting to have a little bit more time for myself and for my creative passions.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.